Hi, I'm Rigger. This is your right, and today we're completing Team Gift. 3/4 of the way ain't bad, but it ain't finished, so let's finish it. Before we get started, be sure to like the video if you like it, share it if you think others would like it, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. So, the Grinch, Ebenezer Scrooge, Frosty the Snowman, there's only one way to cap it off. The last member of Team Gift is, of course, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, not the hardest one to guess. I know you saw the silhouette, and there's antlers. I saw comments saying that he wouldn't be that obvious. There's some kind of swerve here. Well, sorry to disappoint a little bit, there isn't. It's just unlucky that this design was last on the team, so it feels like we're building up to it, and it's sort of an obvious one, but that's just how the team went. Originally, he was going to be the leader, it was all different, and it wouldn't have therefore felt like a build-up to what is like quite an obvious adaptation, but it is what it is. I am definitely not for just making every character adapted from an animal character into a faunus. You definitely need to do more than that a lot of the time. But Rudolph doesn't have a whole lot to go off. This team doesn't have a faunus. It's an easy opportunity for it, so we might as well take it. And I of course did my best with those antlers and the faunus thing to make something interesting out of it. So we'll see what we get. So, let's go to the resemblance card and see who we're building. Also, I realize on this card I don't have a place to write faunus or human. It's obviously here with the antlers, but I might have to consider that in the future, but whatever. So, first up, name. I see lots of guesses for what it could be, and I quite like a few of them. However, no one managed to guess it this time. So, his first name is Taran. Why Taran? Well, a couple reasons actually. The species name for a reindeer is Rangifer tarandus. That means reindeer, that's the species. So if we take the start of Tarandus, we get Taran. And Taran is a name, it's a Welsh name that means thunder, which to me really fits Rudolph running through the skies, or perhaps landing on a roof, you know, a rose such a clatter. But also, Taran is also a Persian name that means white flowers or field. So there's colours there, it's winds all around. Then, for the last name I didn't go too deep, I looked over the colours that are associated with reindeer, and one of them was russet brown. That works for what I'm doing, so russet. Taran Russet. Now on to age and pronouns, etc. So the age is 18, we knew that. But before we go into pronouns, there's something else I'm putting here, because it doesn't have a spot to fit elsewhere. So you know me, share the love, especially in a creative field, and if there's motivation to do something for a character, we should do it. So I'm actually putting here that Taran is a trans character, specifically trans male. Now, if I had more room, I'd like to stick this in the background rather than just a label up here, but it doesn't fit into the background section, and also it isn't the whole story of their character. Taran is trans, but that's not the whole character's story, just part of who they are, which should be normalized anyway. So lacking any adequate room to put it in that section, I decided to put it up here along with the pronouns just as information about the character. Because it equally wouldn't feel right to just say it and not have it on the card of facts about the character. But then the question comes up, okay, so why is this character trans? What's the motivation? There's actually a few cool reasons here. One is a kind of point of interest that scientists have said, like just for fun, that really all of Santa's reindeers should be female, because only female reindeer keep their antlers in the cold. Or in the winter season, I should say. And also, they're just genetically built better for it. The reindeer, what they do for Santa, if you were going to pick a team of reindeer to do that job, scientists say they should be female. So, biologically, science says there should be one thing. But all references and portrayal are that they're the other. Not to mention Rudolph's base story of not being comfortable and not fitting in until he found himself and his role could also fit a trans narrative of discovering who they are. And also, I'm doing a thing with the antlers. This is what I'm doing with the antlers. Because reindeer are the only deer species where both male and female have antlers. So having antlers would make sense for being born genetically female, but also assist them in their identification as male. I don't know, it just all seemed to work for me, and I think it's pretty justified to do. At least there's no reason not to do it, and yeah, normalize trans characters. Next, we go on to height, and they're 5'7", very middle in the terms of heights on this team. Next is the weapon though, and this is one I put a lot into. So, we'll head over to the weapons workshop. As with most characters, this is where we start talking about a second element outside of just being that specific character that could inform them. With this one, it really fit me to be an outdoorsman. A hiker, a rock climber, a wanderer, an explorer. That really fits to me, so go with that with Rudolph traveling the globe, delivering presents, and being based on an animal and part of nature. So all that being said, I wanted their weapon to fit that theme. So I made this weapon a little bit more unique. This one has more forms than most, and you might think it's almost too much, but that's the role of this character and this weapon. They're a survivalist, so their weapon is a Swiss Army knife of weapons. It has lots of options to deal with things. So here it is. It's pretty obvious, but we'll go through it. The first form, in how it's stored generally, is like a big knife. Those top edges are both bladed top and bottom, so the whole outside edge is danger with that knife tip at the top. so it basically resembles a big funky hunting knife. In its second mode, that small part of the shaft contracts even further, creating a marksman hunting pistol. I know there's a little grey square there that makes it look like it's a revolver. It's not, because that middle cylinder there is doing a whole lot of work in this whole design. It couldn't also do that. So it's actually the ejection port for the shell. It has a box magazine in the grip. It has heavy, high caliber rounds, but not a whole lot of capacity. From the top of that cylinder extends a small little sight, and the trigger pops out from the grip. You'll also see a note in this section that says marks his rounds. That will make sense later. Then, in its third form, which is its most normal combat form, the whole head flips around 180 degrees and the shaft extends way up at a curve to make a big climbing pick with a mean swingable point. You can also still pull the trigger if you use the recoil to swing even harder if you need to. And lastly, the entire head can be fired or released from where it is on the shaft, at which point the bladed edge will pop open into two sections with the middle popping out, and they swing wide and become a Y-shaped grappling hook with teeth on the bottom. You also don't have to fire it. You could anchor it in a wall, then release the grappling hook function and lower yourself down a cliff or a gorge. So like I said, it's a Swiss Army knife of options, able to do a whole lot, but not really primarily a weapon, more a tool that's been weaponized. Even the pistol mode is not made for the middle of great combat. It's made to be a marksman shot with a slow fire rate, precise. But if you take it with you into the wilderness, you'll be ready for anything, and that includes Grim. Lastly, it needs a name, and since it can do so much and travels the world with Taran, I'm calling it Pioneer. It's unique and new, and also Pioneer is in the first to explore or settle new places, which it definitely does alongside its owner. Next is Aura Color, and I think that one's pretty easy, we're going to make it red. And next comes Semblance. So this is the last time this year I get to pitch to you that if you haven't seen it yet, check out my Christmas special from last year, where I created the origin story of Christmas on Remnant. But if you have seen that, you'll recognize this Semblance, because for the first time ever, I'm stealing from myself. There's a Rudolph equivalent in that story, and I'm using the same Semblance here because I really like it. Taran's Semblance is called Pathfinder. Pathfinder is incredibly powerful and useful, just not really for fighting. Pathfinder is a weird semblance with a lot of potential. What Pathfinder does is it allows Taran to mark objects and find them, except you're not thinking broadly enough. What he does is pump aura into objects. It could be anything. It could be a wall, a tree, a ring, a building, doesn't matter. How much aura he pumps in dictates how long this effect lasts, but it should be noted that a full aura drain from full to empty would probably be enough to last his lifetime, so it's not that big a deal. So long as he has the time and he can sacrifice the aura, then it has no worries. He never has to worry about it really running out. Basically, once an object is marked, his aura faintly leaks from it to create a marker. So very, very faintly, it leaks aura, and eventually could run out, but it's at such a slow rate it really doesn't matter. What's way more important is what happens next, because once he creates a marker, Taran can activate his semblance, and what it'll do is draw a line in his vision that is the fastest and safest way from him to that object. So basically when it's up, he sees the world with a red line to follow that'll keep him as safe as possible to get to the object as quick as possible. It's like his own personal sat-nav, and it even has red lines marking the ground as if you're looking at a map. But this is where its true potential comes out, because his reach is global. And he can do it as many times as he wants, and it has minimal aura drain to use. Super powerful. He can have hundreds or thousands of markers all over the world and travel to them as efficiently as possible. But this has some caveats. He needs to pump a full load of aura into each marker for it to essentially last forever, or at least his lifetime, which is the same thing. So he also needs to remember where all these markers are so he can sort through them in his head to find the right one. The object also must remain intact. If it's destroyed or moved, he has no way to know that. Meaning that if a marker is gone, he won't know it's gone until he tries to find it and the line doesn't appear, meaning it's no longer active. He doesn't feel it disappear. And also, if someone takes that object he's looking for and moves it to a new place, he doesn't exactly know that's happened, the line just draws him to that object. The only help he gets with that is he does generally know how far away it is. Basically, since what it does is he leaves a marker, and then he is the other marker, and his semblance draws a line between them, following the most efficient and safest route to get there, he can tell the general distance of the thing between the point he's trying to get to. So if it's rapidly moving away, he might be able to guess they're in a vehicle, or if it's drastically a different distance to how he left it, he might be able to interpret that it's been moved. But what this allows him to do is never lose anything. If you have a special item, he can mark it, and if it's stolen, he can always find it. He never loses lose his teammates. Give them all something to hold on to, or like a ring, and he'll be able to find them. There is combat uses for this sort of. If you get a marked item on an enemy, it will draw a line on the battlefield using the quickest, safest path to the target, but that's very difficult to do, so it wouldn't be something you would actively try very much. But also, this is where worldwide travel greatly helps Taran. He can't mark a place or a thing unless he's been there to touch it and do it, so he has to visit everywhere once. While he doesn't exactly know if a marker is still in place from where he left it, he can tell if they're moving as well with his semblance up, not just by the distance but also by the line he's following changing. Seeing as its position moves, the optimal path to get to it will also change. It's a globe-trotting semblance. He absolutely will never get lost so long as he has a marker to follow. This is also where this note on his weapons comes back. He does mark his bullets. Not super heavily, but enough that it will last a good long while, which turns his rounds into tracer rounds. If he tags an enemy or an animal he's hunting and it runs away, he can go find it. But for that to work, the bullet has to stay in the target. It doesn't just rub off by touching you. So using that on people is pretty useless most of the time, but it's a maybe. But he also might be able to shoot, say, a vehicle, and if the bullet stays in the vehicle, he could then follow it. But yeah, it also has very low aura drain to use. When he has it up and he's seeing in his vision this red line, it drains his aura very, very slowly. He can travel for hours and hours with it up. In terms of usability, it's great, but you have to pay attention to how it works and you have to do the groundwork to make it work. And there's also not a whole lot you can do with it in combat unless you're very tricky, except for keeping track of teammates, which can be quite useful. One also bonus is that the semblance finds the safest route, which means sometimes you can detect an ambush or a trap. If he sees the line actively dodge an area where there would be no reason to otherwise, he could interpret that there's something dangerous there that it's leading him around. Because if straight through would be the fastest path, but it's not taking him that way, it's taking him on a safer route, so something's wrong. But that's very circumstantial. So that is Pathfinder, the weakest semblance so far, but also incredibly strong. If there's one person you want to travel with, it's him. He has the skills to travel without it, but especially when he does have it, and somewhere he's been before, well, you're gonna get there in record time and be pretty damn safe along the way. Even on a foggy Christmas Eve, he doesn't even have to slow down. Just follow the glowing red light and you'll make your way. Oh yeah, and before we move on, I did consider giving him something so he just magically flies for no reason, like Santa's reindeer, but this fits the character a lot better. But yes, I did think of it. Moving on, let's do skills. Just what is he good at? Well, first up is obvious, survival. He's a survivalist. If you need to find shelter, cross a river, climb a mountain, find food, he's got you. Is that mushroom poisonous or not? Probably should ask him. He can Bear Grylls this. Next up is both endurance and athleticism. Pretty common for this team actually. Taran can climb rock faces and hike non-stop for over a day through jungle and uneven terrain. He's tough, lean, and conditioned. He's also a medic. Or somewhat. He knows his first aid and a bit more. I wouldn't ask him to do brain surgery, but in general he's a good hand to have around. Next is problem solving. He's great at thinking on the fly, kinda comes up a lot when you travel places you've never been before and face the wilds. So again, he's the guy you want around when things go wrong. He's reliable and he'll guide his team to safety and get them home. Almost like he's Rudolph leading his team safely through the night or something. And continuing with Rudolph's theme of being able to guide them through whatever they need to be guided through, he did win the genetic lottery and end up with great night vision. Those faunus traits are coming in handy, and it is something that reindeer are pretty great at. And, befitting his weapon, he's also a marksman. A crack shot. Not running and gunning in a war situation, but taking his time with a pinpoint shot, he can do that for you. Now onto flaws, and this is interesting. He's very passive. This is one of those ones that's a flaw if you think it is. But in fact, these first three kind of run together. He's passive, not competitive, and unmotivated. This is not someone who wants to be the best or is even totally dedicated to this whole Huntsman thing. He doesn't care for your competition, he's happy passing exams with a C. He's a wandering spirit with lots of skills, but he has no killer instinct. This comes from a few places, but first off, Rudolph doesn't fight back at being made fun of, etc. in his story. He doesn't aim to be the best or the leader. He's just put there when he has the talents needed for the role. Taran is the same. He's perfectly capable, but it's not his life goal to be a huntsman. Even the prizes that come with it, the money, the fame, the power, the respect, these do not interest him at all. You might even wonder why he's doing this, but we'll get to that. Also, to add to the pile of stuff on this character, he's also very suspicious. Don't make the crewmate joke. But he is suspicious of others. He's not a trusting person, almost like he was inspired by someone who everyone treated badly for no reason. It'll come out in his backstory more, but yeah, he doesn't have a lot of faith in people in general, which feeds into the suspicious thing. Next up though is the design. Okay, let's do it. 3, 2, 1, go! Okay, so, not the most exciting design I admit, but it's made to fit the character. He's just a guy. He's just wearing a shirt and pants, not an edgy badass Huntsman costume with flair and craziness and capes or whatever else. Nah, he's a down-to-earth guy who spends his time hiking, climbing, and walking. All that stuff would get in the way. So the boots are big, somewhat heavy, and will probably last a good 10 years. The hem at the top is an allusion to big boots for like snow boots in his origin. Just normal, high-quality, thick trousers too, that can take the punishment of long travel. The only bit of flair is his belt. It's designed around both climbing gear and reindeer reins. He totally wears his big knife weapon on the hip, so it's quick to hand if he ever needs it. And on the other hip is just a normal pouch, almost like a saddlebag as it were. That colour scheme obviously fits a normal deer with the browns and whites, and then Rudolph with the red flare. The striped shirt was initially going to be hatched horizontally as well, so it would look more like a flannel, but instead no, just vertical only stripes. It gives him more of a Christmas feel, like a candy cane, without being too obvious. Also, for someone who spends their time hiking and going through jungle and forest, it's nice and airy, it's pretty breezy, but he can roll the sleeves all the way down if he needs the protection on his arms. It also has the reds on there as a little bit of a safety colour, so he's not impossible to spot. We have a neat little bolo tie with a red gem on it, just as an allusion to the nose, and to give him something, because the design is purposely pretty plain. Actually, for the red nose thing, when I was going into the base design, there was this idea to maybe make him a drunk, because the whole red nose condition for that, you know, fitting into that stereotype. Did you know Rudolph was initially rejected for that reason? When they initially pitched the story of Rudolph, they initially turned down making Rudolph at all into a story because the only connotation they had is that red nose meant drunk, and they didn't want that association with their character. They were more successful the second time they pitched it though. So yeah, I decided against the drunk thing, but there you go, a little bit of trivia. For the face again, we went just very plain. Brown hair like brown fur, brown eyebrows, brown eyes. Very average. The hair pulled back into a small ponytail, a reference to both small deer tails, which aren't exactly that shape, but just in general, and also it just feels like an outdoorsy traveller type to have some hair that's grown a bit longer and is efficiently held back out of their face. It's not overly styled, they don't seem to care too much about their appearance. The antlers are also unremarkable, they're just along the lines of how RWBY do them, so yeah. That's the design. Again, I feel it's a little bit of a letdown, because it's purposely plain, and being last on the team it feels like we were building up to this one, but really no, it's just a member of the team, it's who they are. But that being said, let's find out more about them. Who is this character? Personality. Okay, so as a person, Taran often remains passive and pondering and seems to zone out. He has an affinity for nature, so he usually doesn't engage socially much. That all seems self-explanatory so far. Classrooms and people and gossip just don't interest him, and he wants to be out seeing the world, discovering the unknown. He daydreams about being out in the wilds and grand adventure. However, when you do address him, he's actually very courteous, very kind, and very polite, and actually probably has heard everything you've been saying. He may not be interested in it, but he's very perceptive, so while he stares off into space, he's actually keeping track of all the conversations around him as well. He just doesn't care about them that much. He has great manners, and he speaks very well, and he engages fine, and he's polite. He could really be a charmer actually if he cared at all to be, but he's just not interested. He's also very difficult to provoke. But here's the sticking point, he is incredibly loyal to his team. That's the line. He's passive, calm, and really hard to make angry unless you go at his team. And even then, he probably won't attack you, but he will step in. That's adapted over from him becoming the leader of his sleigh team. There's quite a pack thing to it. It's the same here, you don't mess with his team. The reason for that in character is he highly values people he knows he can rely on, because he's very suspicious, and it'll come out from his background, but he doesn't have a lot of connections to people, he doesn't trust a lot of people. So when he finds people like that, he will fight to keep it. It's the one way you can snap his attention back to what's going on. He puts a huge amount of value on it. But also, because he's super hard to provoke and isn't very competitive, he's great at that problem solving mentioned earlier. In a fight situation, he's not trying to show off, his ego doesn't get bruised, and he won't get provoked into making mistakes. Instead, he'll stay calm and he'll fix the issue and he'll work out how to do it. He's a real asset to a leader like Glade. Alright, goals and allegiances. He wishes to see the world, we know that, we've said that a lot. He lacks faith in not just other people, but also institutions, so he's really only loyal to his team. He goes with them. That's his allegiances. See, they all have things they want to do in a direction they want to go, and he really doesn't, so he goes with them, he just wants to be going somewhere. What other people tell him to do is barely anything worth paying attention to. I mean, he takes minor note of it, he doesn't set out to cause trouble for himself or his team, he doesn't go to break the rules actively, but at the end of the day, he'll do what he wants. Meaning that when it comes to breaking the rules or acting a bit shady, he totally doesn't mind. But as we have stated, he is also very wary of others until they're proven trustworthy due to his past, which we'll cover now. So, why is he like this? Well, just like Rudolph, I think he was the victim of severe bullying when he was younger. This was more specifically around being a faunus, being torn down, stepped on, insulted, and told he had no future basically because of how he was born. And like Rudolph, it's something physical. It's not the nose, but it's the antlers, but same effect. It's something they all point to. As such, he had no want to be around people, and he finds escape in the outdoors. Hating where he has no desire except to leave and find somewhere tranquil, somewhere nice, somewhere he wants to be, and such is the spark of his adventure. Again, born in Anima, since it makes it easy, and there's plenty of jungles and forests in Anima. It's quite a lush place. However, there's a big issue with that plan. If you're a depressed, sad child who only finds home in the outdoors, likes being alone, and wants to travel, it's called Grim. That's a big problem. So he learned to defend himself. He couldn't leave his home yet, but he practiced. He gets good at killing small Grim. But that doesn't inspire him to go beat up his bullies or anything, it instead empowers him that one day he will get out of here, and he'll be good enough to travel and see the world and leave this place behind. Most people didn't know any of this about him. He was the kid who never was around. But one day, in his, I'm assuming, medium-sized village, a massive Grim attack happened. And being around, Taran just started assisting. Out of nowhere to the rest of the town. They weren't super competent, they didn't have Huntsman on standby, they were just villagers with weapons who sometimes have to fight off Grim. Taran stepped in. He took down multiple Grim, he coordinated and led an escape for a group of survivors, and he got them somewhere safe nearby. Once there, he helped with their injuries. He was really impressive. Suddenly all his skills were put to use. He made fires, he found food, he helped people where he could, and just like with Rudolph, once he shows his usefulness and talents, well, suddenly everyone thinks he's awesome. All those kids who used to make his life hell and all the adults who either didn't care or basically turned a blind eye to it, suddenly he saved their lives, and he's the reason they are alive and getting better. He was a key factor in that. He didn't do everything himself, there were others who were helping, but no one knew he had it in him. However, in the wake of this, it suggested to him that maybe he should try his hand at being a huntsman if he has these skills. Now, having no real wealth, and having no interest in getting a normal job and being tied down, and also not being good enough to totally survive on his own for the rest of time yet, and as an excuse to leave the village in general, he takes up the idea. Why not become a huntsman? It's 4 years in one place and that sucks, but he's already stuck in his own village, so it's a better option. Go there, learn to be a huntsman, hone his skills even more, learn new skills, and by the time he graduates, he'll be fully equipped to travel the world as he sees fit. He can even then take jobs and make money along the way when he needs it. That sounds like a great plan. Little did he know he'd get so attached to his team, which he will, but luckily, he doesn't have a set direction and the team has things they want to do, so he'll just tag along with them. As long as they don't stay in one place too long, he just wants to travel. And as far as the team goes, they couldn't have a better travel partner. And lastly, quirks. So let's do this. First, he's an excellent cook. He learned to cook for himself out in the wilds. He has a knack for it, with fresh ingredients and everything else. A lovely meal is a warm and Christmassy thing we can give him, and he can even make him on the road, lucky his team. Another quirk is he's curious about space, because no one talks about space in RWBY, and as a born adventurer and adapted from someone who can fly, it's just the great unknown up above. He'll probably never get to explore it, but he will lay out in nature and stare at the stars and wonder. It's just that kind of guy. To go with that, he has a great sense of smell. Not to the point where it's actually like his faunus ability and it comes over from actually like animal level qualities, but it's peak human level. Because, just like Rudolph, he can be led by his nose if need be if there's something to find. Another one is that to pass the time, he actually carves wooden figures and charms and jewellery, etc. 2 reasons, something to do with his hands and a big knife, like whittling, and he can give them as gifts, which is his next quirk. He gives a lot of gifts to people and trinkets. He does this even for people he basically doesn't know. He makes them all the time, so he just gives them away. But he will sit there in a conversation, looking off into space, not taking part, and as he gets up to leave, he'll just hand someone he didn't even talk to a little gift. But to those paying attention, know that this isn't just an adaptation of Rudolph literally going around delivering presents. He's handing off markers. It's a way to keep track of people. It's why he favours little keychain figures and charms and rings, things you might keep with you. Suspicious people tend to be a little underhanded sometime, and he'd really like to keep track of everyone he can. But it's functional. These people may be huntsmen he has to work with, and he has to find them. What if they vanish? Or what if there's a disaster and he has to find people to dig out of the rubble? Or however else he'd like to justify it. Although it may come in really handy one day if they have to do, say, practice trading missions against other teams, and they can suddenly find them all. Those other teams may not even be able to figure out why. But to go with that and one more Christmas Christmas thing, he actually keeps a list of all the gifts he gives out and who he gives them to. It's one of the things he carries, a book with all the gifts he's managed to give out and who took them. Because his Semblance can basically have unlimited markers, but he has to remember which one is which to use it. He has to get it clear in his head. But yeah, it's also very Santa-like. He may not be Santa, but he is Rudolph, so close enough. He has a list of gifts. And lastly, as a survivalist and being very adaptable, why not? He's also ambidextrous. Just another thing to add on to his survivalist talents. And there it is, Taran is finished. Someone said they needed an adult to guide them. He's not quite that, but he's also the team's dad a little bit. Not super concerned with the rivalries, pettiness, and drama going on, but he does guide the team out of trouble when need be. Functionally, he's a utility on the battlefield, an adaptable weapon with an adaptable skill set. Not a killer, but fiercely loyal to his team, so steps in when he has to. Growing up, he has no one to trust, but once he finds that and forms those bonds, he won't let them go. But with a calm mind, we'll try and fix things before there's violence. But he is very capable against Grimm. He can get you anywhere you need to go, and once you've been there, he'll get you there even faster next time. He gives gifts to everyone he can, so he can find anyone which can take him anywhere. If someone's going home to Atlas for vacation, here's a gift you'll likely leave at home. Now I can find my way to Atlas when I need to, because it's there. Though he does have to take it on faith that that's what happened and the trinket didn't get lost in the ocean or something and he's just going to a dead end. But once he gets to the actual city, say it's Atlas, he can then leave a more permanent mark, like mark a trinket and hide it somewhere he thinks will never be found, or just mark the wall of a building you don't think is going to be demolished anytime soon. All he wants to do is travel the world, and the more places he goes, the more powerful his abilities get. But the most important thing is he'll never lose his teammates and he will always get them home. But here we are, Team Gift is complete. You can see why as far as pairs go, this one definitely had to be the foil for Ink. The most motivated competitive person imaginable is of course partnered with a passive, casual person who isn't too fussed about all this Huntsman stuff. But the team that will surely become a family one day with these bonds is complete. With egos and personalities both ultra bright and very serious or cunning, he's the perfect balance. The medium ground, the level head, no ego, no greed, but also no strong drive. But he'll just have to find his direction through their drive, and he'll just make sure to get them there safely every time. So long as they're on the road, he's happy, and he'll just have to suffer through school to make sure to pass and get there. After that, it's true freedom with his new family. There's the squad, our holiday heroes, Team Gift in full. Thank you for joining me for this little experiment. It may not be a view grabber that's going to revolutionize my channel, but I'm glad everyone who does watch seems to be enjoying this. So, here at the end, here's the deal. I have another team of 4 I want to get done soon, but feel free to put forth suggestions for any other characters you'd like to see adapted in this way. No promises, but we'll see what happens. Doesn't have to be Christmas, from anything, from any media or story you like, and we'll just see how it goes. They may not always be in teams of 4 either. That takes a lot more planning and a lot more work to make a cohesive team and try and get all the letters right and, yeah, work out the team dynamics. That's way more work than just adapting one character. So it won't always be teams of 4, we can just do one-offs. We could also do like, I don't know, let's adapt King Boo into a villain or something. Doesn't need a whole team of 4, it doesn't have to be Huntsman. We'll adapt Bayonetta into being a teacher. I actually thought about doing some wrestlers, just because there's fun characters there. You could turn them into Huntsmen and adapt their moves and stuff. I don't know, we'll see what happens, but yeah, this might keep being a thing. Before you go, be sure to like the video if you liked it, share anything else would like it, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and please subscribe to see more. Until next time, my name is Rigger, I hope you have a wonderful new year and a fantastic 2022, and I hope I did alright.